So this question is about doing the yoga. Because a lot of times when you go on retreats, the Buddhists don't ordinarily practice yoga exercise, although now it's becoming a little bit more common. But when I first started teaching yoga with the meditation, now it's been almost 35, almost 40 years, there wasn't any Buddhist teachers really teaching yoga, not especially Theravada. And people even criticized me in the beginning, saying, "What are you teaching Hinduism for?" And because they think it's just part of Hinduism, but actually they don't understand it's a pure science of body and mind, in similar but different ways than the Buddhist teaching is also a science of the mind. But anyway, so this question is yoga the best way or the only way to prepare the body for meditation? What about dance or another form of embodiment exercise? It looks like whatever form it is, mind, body, and breath should be in sync. Well, there are different forms of sort of meditative exercise. But I personally started with yoga when I started practicing meditation. And I didn't bother learning anything else because yoga hit the spot, so to speak. And so I didn't feel the need to learn or do any other forms. Now I know there are other forms, especially Tai Chi and Qigong, which yoga come from the Indian system, and Tai Chi and yoga, from my understanding, comes from more the Chinese tradition. But those are also forms of exercise that are done in a very meditative way. So anything that helps keep your mind in the present moment, but especially tuning in to the subtle energies that are created by the movement, and that help bring your mind to the present moment, you could say that those could be useful. But because the yoga works on making the spine flexible and strengthening the muscles of the back and making all the joints in the body kind of loose and stretching out the muscle tissue so that the oxygenated blood has a chance to really penetrate into the deepest nooks and crannies and all the cells of the body, mind, nervous system, which other systems may or may not do in that same way. And then also the breathing, coordinating that with the breathing. Not all systems have the breathing coordinated in the specific way as done in yoga, and encouraging deeper, slower breaths and learning how to hold the breath in longer or shorter, because all these different ways of breathing have an effect on the nervous system and the mind in a positive way. So I wouldn't say that yoga is the only way, and each person is going to find, I've known people that tried yoga and maybe they're not able to stretch so much or do some of the yoga. So for them, maybe Tai Chi and some of these other forms that don't require such, let's say, type of stretching may be better for that. So I never like to say this is the absolute best way or the only way to do anything. But each person, by trying different ways, the main thing is, how does it help you? And the criterion should be how it helps you to be more mindful, to become more concentrated, to be more relaxed, and to develop meditation to deeper levels. That should be the main criterion of whatever kind of meditation you're practicing, or whatever the kind of physical exercise. From the Dhamma point of view, that should be the main criterion. Is this helping you to have better mindfulness? Is it helping you to weaken your craving and desire for material pleasures and things? Does it help you to overcoming your anger, to get more centered in the body, to develop deeper levels of concentration and wisdom? These are the important criteria. And if you're doing something and those negative states of mind seem to be increasing, then you can question what you're doing or how you're doing it. But if you're doing it in the right way, then it should have those beneficial qualities, because that was how they were intended to be in the first place. I mean, yoga itself, the word yoga itself means to yoke the mind to the state of oneness. So yoga actually is meditation. This idea that yoga is physical culture in the West, this is a westernized thing. Because even the Buddha, he used the word yoga, but it was in terms of the meditation, not so much physical exercise. And even within the yoga system, pranayama and the asana are just the preliminary stages. And that leads to the concentration and wisdom, the dharana, sense withdrawal, which is mindfulness, and the concentration, jhana, and so on. This is also, the steps in yoga. Now, the yogic types of meditation and the Buddhist meditations, they all do diverge a little bit and are kind of different systems. But I prefer the Buddhist system because it's very much more clearly defined and explained and so on, and leads to different effects. But that's another story in itself. Okay, so. And so what about dance or other forms of embodiment exercise? Again, if it leads to those beneficial qualities that I mentioned, then it may be okay. And of course, we know, or we've heard about, the Sufi dances where they lose themselves in the dance, and the idea is to eventually lose the self, the sense of I. And that's a kind of meditation. That is a deep form of meditation, if you can do it that way. A lot of other people say, playing guitar is my meditation. Or doing, people use the term meditation in very different ways. And what it means to them can be different. So when we're talking about meditation from the Buddhist point of view, it's very specific. It leads to deepening of mindfulness, concentration, and wisdom, and leading to the states of liberating the mind from all of its unwholesome and karmic knots and so on, to free the mind. Okay. This question is, can you talk a bit more about what the Buddha says on the middle path? What does it look like for a layperson? No. The very first sermon that the Buddha gave after his enlightenment was called Turning the Wheel of Dhamma. After the Buddha had attained enlightenment, after he spent several weeks just enjoying the bliss of that enlightenment and so on, it took him a couple of months or so, and he walked to the city of Varanasi, and there he gave the first sermon. And it was in that Dhamma talk, he gave it to 5 of his former ascetic friends, that they had been meditating together and practicing asceticism, following mainly the Hindu kind of system of self-mortification and fasting and a lot of these things, and using doing formless jhana meditations. But the Buddha tried all those things, and he wasn't satisfied that those ways led to the highest liberation. So he left those monks and went out on his own, and then attained enlightenment, or what he felt was the true enlightenment. But then he came back, and he found those 5 monks meditating, and he went up to them, and they thought they saw the Buddha coming, and said, "Oh, this Buddha looks different, His aura kind of, At first they said, let's don't pay any respect to him. He left us, and so on. But then as the Buddha got closer, his aura was so kind of magnetizing that they couldn't resist, and then they went to him and bowed down and wanted to listen to what he had to say. And he gave them this turning the wheel of Dhamma, in which he talked about the middle path. He said, this is the middle path that leads to the overcoming of sorrow, lamentation, grief, and despair, and tuning in to the mind and to the middle path, which he then described as the Noble Eightfold Path. So when the Buddha talks about the middle path in the suttas, in the discourse, he was referring to the Noble Eightfold Path. It starts with right understanding, and then right thought, and then right speech, right action, right livelihood, and then right mindfulness, right effort, and right concentration. So, but he called it the middle path because it leads to the state of the middle, as I already explained quite extensively yesterday or this morning in today's Dhamma talk about the middle path. Meditation means keeping the mind in the middle between the extremes. And that's what the Buddha said too. This middle path goes beyond the extremes of pleasure and pain, self and others. So even though he explained the middle path as being the Eightfold Path, it's what that following the Eightfold Path leads the mind to the present moment. Letting go of the past and future with all the defilements and being established permanently in that state of present moment liberated awareness. So the middle path itself is, as it's defined by the sutta, talked about normally, means the Eightfold Path. But you have to understand, what does it lead to? It leads to that state of meditation, or transcending all of the extremes. The extremes of going beyond pleasure and pain, going beyond me and others, going beyond the past and the future, and living in the present moment. So that's what we call the subtler middle path. The middle path is keeping the mind in the middle, avoiding those extremes. So the middle path can be a way of actually practicing, but the actual state of meditation and liberation is the mind resting in the middle path. So there's two ways that you can see that. In the Dhamma, there's always 2 meanings. There's an external meaning and there's an internal meaning. Even to the body and the mind and almost everything that you read about, there's like even rebirth. There's external rebirth and internal rebirth. There's external suffering, there's internal suffering. There's the external middle path, would be practicing all these things, right? Practicing sila and having to exert this effort to practice and restrain your mind. But then there's the middle path of the mind actually resting in the present moment. Now, what does it look like for a layperson? Well, whether you're a layperson or a monk, basically it means avoiding the extremes. So even as a layperson, the Buddha didn't tell people they had to give up all their desires. They said, be careful of what you desire and don't become a slave to it. That's the main thing. Moderation. He said everything in moderation. Don't deny yourself any little creature comforts or happiness, but then don't become a slave to it either, and then need more and more to satisfy that desire. So, and that can apply to a lay person as well. And the way that you raise your family and the way that you interact in the world. But in order to do that, you have to have mindfulness. That's why without mindfulness is the balance point. Mindfulness is there in the middle that knows when you're going off one end or going off the other side. And bring it back to the balance. And that's why people who don't meditate, it's very difficult for them to be able to retrain the mind, because the mind is always going off on one extreme or another. Like people try one thing and they exert a lot of effort, and then if they don't have as quick results as they want, they give it up, and then they relapse and go back into bad habits, and then maybe later they'll go ahead again and exert themselves really hard. And then get burned out and then relapse again and go back into, unmindful activities. And so some people go back and forth like that for many years of their whole life because they fail to reach that middle path. And that's why it depends on, it's not a matter of yourself forcing it and doing it. I'm doing these things. But it's a very gradual path based on right understanding. That's why right understanding comes first. Next, I'm going to talk about that tomorrow in the closing talk, so I don't want to give up all my secrets now. But basically, for the layperson, it means finding the middle path. And that means following the path of moderation. And whenever you notice yourself, mind getting out of balance, that's the time you have to check what you're doing, and then get refocused and reoriented. And the mind's getting too lazy, and exert more effort. If there's too much effort and the mind's getting all confused and neurotic, then slow down. There's another question about the yogic breathing. When inhaling during a yoga pose, does the in-breath have to come all in one go? I find that there's usually a little more breath to inhale when I'm in the pose, and it happens incrementally rather than in one continuous breath. Just wondering if the aim is to inhale completely. Well, retraining the breathing takes time. And usually in what we call yogic breathing, means to start the in-breath by bringing the air first into the lower lung and then gradually bringing it into the middle and the upper lung. And it's one continuous breath, or at least it appears that way, but actually it's not really. It is a whole series of short expansions and expansions and expansions, but we don't see that normally because our mind isn't tuned in fine enough to see it. But so you have to train yourself at it. And it's a matter of like, taking let's say 3 seconds just to breathe in, and you're breathing 1 second in the lower lobe, 1 second into the middle, and 1 second into the top. And then holding the breath in for 1 or 2 seconds. And then taking 3 seconds to breathe out. First letting the air out from the bottom, and then the middle, and then the top. And then again, in breath, bringing the air from the bottom up to the top, holding it in. And then out breath, letting the air out also from the bottom, followed by the middle and the top. Now that takes some training to do that, because normally people haven't trained themselves, and the breath is just going in its the way it's been sort of conditioned by your posture and emotions and things like that. So it usually takes a systematic training, and to gradually increase the length of your breath. Now, most people's lungs are shrunk because they don't use them very much, so they shrunk. Any doctor can tell you that if you don't use your muscles, they're going to shrink, right? And so that's why some people find it difficult to take a deep breath and to hold their breath in, because their lungs have become so kind of shrunken. So it takes a gradual training to gradually increase the amount that you can breathe in and hold the breath in, as those muscles of the lung tissue and cells gradually get more soft and elastic through a systematic kind of breathing. And you find yourself being able to breathe in a very long breath. You can hold the breath in quite a long time without feeling any strain to it. And that's when the mind really, really gets into a very deep level of tranquility and awareness. Because our breathing and thoughts are related. The quicker you breathe, then the more excited the mind is generally. And the reason why we breathe quickly is because we're mostly slouching. And you can't take a deep breath when you're slouched over. It's impossible, because your lungs are contracted. Only when you're sitting up straight, then the rib cage can fully expand as you're breathing in, and those lungs can hold quite a bit of air. And any doctor will normally tell you that people breathe only about 1/10 of the lung capacity in their normal breathing. And that's why you have to breathe quicker in order for the body to get enough oxygen. But when you develop deep, slow breathing, and you are taking, normally people breathe about 15 times per minute. Between 10 and 15 times per minute respiration, normally, even in a state of rest. But through yogic training, you train yourself to gradually reduce that rate of respiration to just 2 or 3 times a minute, or even 4 times a minute. And doing it in that rhythmic way. And that sets up a very relaxing and tranquilizing vibration through the whole nervous system. And so you're taking in one breath, by filling up the lungs more or less fully completely, maybe not fully completely, but let's say 90%, you're getting more oxygen into the lungs in one breath than you normally would get by breathing 3 or 4 or 5 times. And so that's why when you go into deeper meditation, the respiration also gets very less, because the mind and body, breathing is related to the mind and body. The more active you are, you need to breathe more. to supply the body with oxygen that is burning up. Every time you move, even moving a finger, you burn up oxygen. Every time you lift your arm up to scratch an itch, you burn up oxygen. You need more air. And then the thinking also uses a lot of oxygen. The brain consumes massive amounts of oxygen to think and power all that stuff that's going on in the brain. It's like a nuclear power plant. So in meditation, when you still the body and you stop fidgeting around and moving and all this, the body doesn't need so much oxygen because it's not consuming that oxygen. It's not moving so much. And then when you stop thinking so much, you reduce the volume of your thoughts, then that reduces the need for oxygen too. And so in deep meditation, when you enter deep states of concentration, it'll seem like your respiration actually stops or has stopped for a while. Because the body is self-regulating and it knows how to regulate itself. But most people, again, as I mentioned before, we've lost that connection with the natural wisdom of the body, and it's become unnatural in many respects. So that's why the yogic training helps to retrain the whole body and mind, because the deeper, slower the respiration is, the deeper you enter into deeper states of concentration and stillness. So, in the practicing the deep breathing, don't worry so much whether you're breathing in the lungs completely or in each breath and so on. But, just try to breathe in until it feels that there's a comfortable expansion there. And then just hold the air in. While you're holding the air in and the lungs are expanded, that means those cells are stretching out. But if you just breathe in real quickly like that, then they don't really have time to stretch out more and to expand in order to hold more air and so on. But when you're observing the breathing, even if you're doing some deep breathing and you're really concentrated, you will notice that actually it's not one continuous smooth inhalation necessarily. It's a series of short movements. And then the same with the out breath. But normally you'd have to be in a state of samadhi to actually feel that, at that deep, subtle level. But for others, normally it's, a lot of people, just to breathe in 2 or 3 seconds, are kind of straining at it because the lungs are shrunk. But anyway, so it's a very gradual method of development, but it's very powerful, and actually it's one of the most valuable things that I learned in yoga in all my time and practice in India, was learning to develop that type of what we call deep, slow, rhythmic breathing. And it puts you into a meditative state, even just doing that. And so that's why I always encourage people to, at the beginning of meditation, to try to develop that, do several rounds or more of that deep, slow breathing, and even do it up to 5 or 10 minutes. And it helps you to concentrate. And especially if the breaths are reduced to about 3 to 4 breaths a minute, it induces a very tranquilized vibration in the body. And when you let go of that, basically you're already in a state of, almost in a state of first jhana. If you could do that rhythmic breathing for 10 minutes without feeling tired and really being very mellow and smooth like that, and finally you let go of that deep breathing, or the body would get to a point where it no longer needs to breathe, and you're left right there in the present moment. And that's a state of samadhi. Because it may not last too long in the beginning, but nevertheless, that is the effect that it has. Because a lot of people that meditate, they may be doing a lot of things in the house, and it's, oh, I gotta go meditate. So you rush to the meditation hall and quickly get down and sit down on the cushion and try to concentrate the mind, and then boom, you hit with all kind of hindrances. Where they have to struggle a lot to get their mind to calm down. But instead of rushing to the meditation hall to sit down, just mindfully walk to the meditation hall and walk to meditation, and you get there. Do a few standings, some deep, slow breathing, a few stretches, get the mind gradually into the body, and then you sit down and bingo, you're already there. Or almost. At least it's much easier then to focus a little bit more and then develop that more concentration. But in the meditation, you don't want to be doing that deep, slow breathing all the time. But to start out with that, maybe do it for the first, even just doing it 6 or 9 times, if you do it really slowly, is enough to put you in a very nice, tranquil state. But you could go on longer, 5 or 10 minutes, but at some point you'll naturally want to give it up. And then you just let it go. At that time, you just let the breath return to however it wants to go. Sometimes it may just pause for a long time, even up to a minute or so. You won't feel any desire to want to breathe because the system had gotten so oxygen saturated. And then gradually the breath starts coming in again, and then you follow that uncontrolled, you use that uncontrolled, irregular rhythm to continue to stay focused on, to keep the mind connected to the present moment. But then sometimes later, maybe 5 or 10 minutes later, maybe the mind starts getting active again, and you can then take a couple of more deep, slow breaths in order to calm the mind back down and then go into that more tranquility. So in one meditation period, you could do the deep breathing, then let it go, and then try to focus and just without any of that deep breathing. But if you started to get drowsy again or too many thoughts, come back. Do 2 or 3 of those deep, slow breaths. Boom, it brings you instantly back. And then so you can kind of go in and out and use the breathing in that way to gradually reach a point where you'll be able to let that deep breathing, because the deep breathing will just prevent the mind from going into the real deeper levels of concentration. So it's just a tool that we use. We can use it in an effective way to help us more easily, get into the deeper levels of awareness. So that's what I call the body-mind connection. I even wrote a little book about that. About the integration of yoga and especially of the Buddhist meditation. It uses the body as the entry point for reaching the present moment. Rather than a lot of meditations have you just try to visualize some white light or just immediately try to think about what emptiness is and somehow kind of get your mind into some formless meditation state or something. But the mindfulness practices use the natural connection of the body and mind to bring the mind to that point of the present moment awareness. but remaining grounded in the body. So you could actually learn how to function and move about in that state of awareness through that practice. This other question. Is it good to focus on the present moment? Or it is good to focus on the present moment, but it seems unavoidable to look at the past and future. How can we find the balance between looking back, learn from the past, and looking forward for the future, without it leading to desire and suffering? Well, that's true. I mean, the average person, even the Buddha, knew about the past and the future. I mean, he could remember hundreds and thousands of past lives. I mean, my gosh. He could take his mind back all that way and remember everything he had done for hundreds and thousands of past lives. But he wasn't attached to it. And he could drop it just as easily. So it's not that you want to erase the past or erase the future. Buddha knows, okay, I have to walk now. In a couple of weeks, I should be over in this place over there. But while he's doing that, he's in the present moment. His mind is not dwelling on the future or dwelling on the past. It's not the past and the future that the problem is, being caught by them and allowing the past and the future to increase your desires or aversions or fears, worries, and anxieties, because you're clinging to the outcomes and things like that. So it's not that we're about trying to eliminate the past and the future, but it's not to be controlled by them or having worry or fear about them, because we can't control them anyway. So living in the present moment means that having the mind connected to the present moment, but at the same time, when things come, you can easily be aware that something needs to be done, but then you drop it and you dwell in the present moment. When the need to reflect on it comes again, okay, you can do that, but you don't let those things trigger off other unwholesome states, and you don't get obsessed with the past or the future, because you're connected to the present moment, and the present moment is so fulfilling that the past and the future actually are a burden to think about, because it's so peaceful and so fulfilling, dwelling in the present moment. But you can still think about the past and the future while you're thinking in the present moment. So, it's a fine balance, but that's what the middle path is. The Eightfold Path, it helps to bring the mind to that balance. So a lay person, naturally, they have to think about the future and so on. And we can learn from the past too. That's a very important thing, actually, even within the Buddhist reflections, to reflect on the past. See, how many times am I repeating these same habits over and over again and getting nothing but suffering out of it? And so you learn to gradually wake up and realize that all these sensual pleasures and enjoying and having fun, isn't all that beat up? Because it always has a downside. Being addicted and enjoying pleasures and going about here and there. There's always a downside to it, because you become unmindful. So there's a little story that's appropriate to this. In the sort of Sufi stories, there's a sort of Sufi holy man named Mullah Nasruddin. How many have read the stories of Mullah Nasruddin? He's sort of like a a funny mystic kind of thing. And so he was teaching his disciples. So he got a big bag of red hot chilies, a big, gunny bag of red hot chilies. And he was chewing these chilies in front of all of his students. And tears were coming down, and sweating, and tears were coming down. And the students were looking at him and said, Mula, what are you doing? Why are you eating all those chilies? And through his tears, he said, I'm trying to find the sweet one. Right? So that's what most people are doing. One more time I'll get it, I'll get that satisfaction one more time. But there's never a one more time. So that's why in grounding the mind, living more in the present moment, there's not that big of a need for wanting to enjoy something in the future because you're already satisfied, content. You could sit there for a whole day and night in your house not doing anything and be bubbling over with perfect contentment. But it's coming from deep from within inside. Natural present moment vibration of the cells and so on. I often find that when I stand mindfully, the muscles in the body will start to relax, and it can be quite painful, as if the body is so used to being tight. It is uncomfortably to loosen the grip. I feel this particularly in my belly and lower back. Do you have any thoughts on this? Well, it's true. Most people are walking around in a state of tension because of this worry and anxiety of just life and, not getting what you want and getting what you don't want and all the tension that comes from that and having to deal with all the things that are happening. That's why people say they're stressed out. That stress comes from the tension of the body. People are in a state of fear all the time, but they don't even know it because they've become so used to it. They're living in a state of 60% body tension or something like that. They're holding all this energy in, but they become so used to it they think it's normal. So then when you actually start to relax, it can feel kind of strange or like, threatening or even kind of uncomfortable. And it takes some time to kind of get used to. That's why after doing the yoga exercise, actually, after doing a longer period of yoga, it's good, like we did today, to do a laying down relaxation period before just getting up and going off, so that you can feel that deep relaxation in the body and mind. But as you do that, that may release trapped memories and also trapped energy in the body. Because again, we're all tense and we're holding all this stuff in. And when you relax, it comes up. It's like squeezing a sponge, right? If you squeeze a sponge and then you let go, it sucks the water back in. And that's why meditation usually when you have a good meditation, it's going to be followed by a not so good meditation. And the reason is, if you do somehow, manage to get a period of good meditation, of course, using these terms good and bad is don't really suggest labeling them like that, but still, a good meditation is what you could call kind of just being quite content with the present moment and being able to endure pains without fretting about it too much, letting sounds and other distractions kind of just come and go without getting carried into them, and just a sense of just being content with the present moment, just, sitting and breathing and just feeling that life force there. It's so pleasant that you feel content. Or when you're concentrating and really concentrating on the breathing and really get focused on that. But it's like that pushes all your old thoughts of the past and the future down from the surface. Let's see, in the beginning you're thinking about all these words, but then you come in to meditate. And somehow, if you were able to, the mind might settle down into tranquility. I mean, so surface thoughts would get kind of pushed down underneath by the strength of the concentration, it pushes the mind down, and then it puts pressure on the contents underneath that. So like scratching the surface. And then when you come out of that meditation, that energy that had been kind of compressed now comes back up, and you can become irritated and have other distractions and unhealthy thoughts for a bit. So that's why usually meditation isn't just a linear process. Once you start getting a good meditation, it means they're all going to be good. No. And so if you have a good meditation for the next time, first of all, you should never expect what's going to happen when you sit down. You just sit down and you just go through the steps and see what happens. And sometimes you get concentrated and many times you won't. But you have to accept that. And that's the way it's going to be for many people who go many, many years. And maybe 1 out of 10 meditations is what they might call good, right? Or peaceful. But still, that's the way it is. But of course, as you continue to practice, then little by little, the good meditations will become more frequent, and as the mind gets purified. So meditation really is a purification of the unconscious mind, all of the repressed memories and negativities and thoughts and so on that have been accumulated even from past lives, brought over to the present, but even just from this present life. And by not creating more negativity, from the practice of Dhamma, by living your daily life, by practicing the other steps of the Eightfold Path, that hopefully we'll talk about tomorrow, that you stop creating further bad karma, like these precepts we recited, right? So all these 8 precepts. And refraining from harsh speech, refraining from lying, harsh speech, useless speech, malicious speech, and these other types of actions that create these negative waves. So you have to stop accumulating those and developing the mind, and then gradually the old negative qualities gradually get used up or become weak, and the stronger wholesome qualities grow stronger. And that could take a whole lifetime of practice, but it depends on how people practice. All right, so I think that was 4 minutes. All right. Hope we didn't bore all of you out there in Zoom land. But now, if is there any chats written down? No chats written down. Is there any yellow hands up there?
Dear Bhante, would you please give us tips on identifying useless speech so that we may better avoid it?
Well, you may not want to hear my answer or the Buddha's answer. The Buddha said, if there's, whenever you get together one or more people, speak the Dhamma or keep silence. So, that'll give you a break. So it means the useless speech means talking about, telling jokes and especially getting caught up in gossip and just talk about, beauty queens and all these movie stars and just stuff that excites the senses and stuff that actually increases your desire and sensual desires or aversion, getting caught up in arguing with people, conspiracy theories and all this stuff. All that would be included in useless speech. It means speech that doesn't really help our mind get peaceful. Basically, put it that way. So when you speak, you try to speak by remaining grounded and aware of your speech. So when you speak, you have to be aware of what you're speaking. And when you notice you're speaking kind of going off a little bit into unwholesome ways or boasting or, criticizing others or using some bad word, that's the time you have to check it, and try to bring it back to more helpful speech. And the Buddha gave a couple of suttas and one mentioned the right time to speak, to talk to people and so on. A lot of guidance are given in some sutras based on that. But when you get together on that one off. Did it cut off? Oh. So especially with family reunions, right? So that's a time when you got your relatives coming from different places or you get together with friends. That's a time especially when it usually goes into useless speech or frivolous speech. Start talking about all the stuff that happened to them and most of it is not important. And then people get carried away and then somebody says something, then you want to play upmanship, you want to boast or say something better, take over the conversation, and then, all these people are vying to butt in and say stuff, and what could have been some very innocent, nice conversation can lead into so many different directions, right? And even ugly things can happen too, because most of the people are not mindful. And speech triggers off emotions, they come up and you can't control them, and you might start cursing at somebody. So that's why, especially when you have conversations with people, is the time to be very mindful. And actually, there's a branch of meditation retreats called the Dhamma Dialogue, in which they specifically train themselves to have conversations with people, but while maintaining that awareness of what you're speaking, and anytime you feel yourself getting some tension or not agreeing with what somebody says, feel what it's doing in your body, and then tell yourself to relax your body, kind of monitoring, self-monitoring yourself as you're talking. Because so much karma is created by bad speech and unwholesome speech. Okay?
Another question is, dear Bhante, the Brahma-Vihara, the 7 factors of enlightenment, and the 10 paramis, all mention upekha. Is there any difference either in meaning or practice?
could say yes. It depends on what degree of equanimity and so on you have reached. Now, equanimity is talked about in the jhanas. It's also talked about in the insight meditation and the 7 factors of enlightenment, being the 7th factor of enlightenment. And also in the jhanas, in the 3rd and the 4th jhana, equanimity is reached. And that equanimity basically has very similar qualities. It's the mind that is pretty much resting in the present moment and is not going to any of the extremes. It's called even-mindedness. And that's why even in the Brahma Viharas, equanimity is the 4th one. After you've done metta, karuna, and mudita, which have an emotional tone to them, then you have gotten beyond that and you reach equanimity. And the same with the jhanas. As you're practicing the jhanas, the 1st and 2nd jhana are still coarse and they have a little bit of thinking combined with them, and they also have a sort of a static, very blissful kind of sensations that are kind of exciting. And then gradually as you reach the 3rd and the 4th ones, you let go of those exciting things and reach those more pure states of equanimity and tranquility. And then even in the 7 factors of enlightenment, after you've practiced mindfulness and investigation and developed the insight knowledges, you come to equanimity too. So that equanimity, yes, it's basically the same, but it's reached in different ways. You can reach it through the jhanas, you can reach it through insight meditation, you can reach it through the Brahma Viharas. But equanimity itself is not the ultimate goal. Equanimity is the last stage before enlightenment would happen, would occur. That means the mind going beyond self and others and reaching that transcendent state of non-duality. So, anyway. Okay, friends, so I think now that's enough. We don't want to excite the mind too much. We still want to have our last period of meditation this evening. So just while we have it in mind, as we've talked about these different things, just want to kind of straighten up and just take a couple of deep, slow breaths, see how quickly you can reverse your focus from looking up here at me to turning your attention inside to feel the breathing, let go of that external observation. Just take a couple of those deep, slow breaths, holding the breath in a few seconds. Feel the body. Breathing in, letting go of the past and future. Breathing out, sitting here and now. Breathing in, letting go of the past and future. Breathing out, sitting here and now. Now when you feel somewhat relaxed, then you can slowly stand up and do some standing awareness to relieve any discomfort in your legs, build up and discomfort. You can stand up if you need to use the restroom, you can go and do that, come back and we'll do a few stretches again before sitting down for our last meditation. Breathing in, hold the air in the lungs for several seconds. Sudden exhilaration, inoculation. Breathing in, letting go of the past and the future. Breathing out, standing here and now. Breathing in, letting go of the past and the future. Breathing out, standing here and now. Breathing in, feeling the whole body. Breathing out, feeling the whole body. And do those stretches, coordinating with the breathing. And the next in breath, arms over the head and fill up the fingers, bring the palms up, straighten the arms, stretch the head back, stretch up here, feel sensation, out breath, and palms down, touch the head. In breath, and back a little. Out. Third time, hold the up and stretch long. Release the fingers, out breath, palms back to the side. Allow tingling sensation in the oxygenated blood and life force moving up and down to the nervous system. Because of the movement of the breathing, feeling the warmth and majesty. Next in breath, pushing up on the toes, arms over the head, stretch up. The in breath, we have to lift up the body, blowing up the helium balloon, body rises. Next to the side bending, using one arm at a time. Next in breath, raise your left arm up with the bicep close to your head. In the out breath, bend over the right side. Let your hands slide down by the knee. Keep the arms straight. In breath. And go down to the same side again. Up. Good time out. Out breath, lower that arm. In breath, raise the other arm. In time, bending over the other side. Out breath. And do the forward and backward bending. There, holding the palms out. In breath, raise the arms up and out to the side. Breathe in, bring back. And lift up. The arms out at the side. The out breath. Hands down the floor. Keep the legs straight. Standing up, the palms out, in breath up and down. Breath up and together. Just and organic, alive, vibration of the inner awareness. Present moment awareness. Boil the water to sip the water. Centering the awareness in the body. Do some deep, slow breathing. You start the meditation with chanting Namo Buddhaya. Just listen to those vibrations, feel those vibrations in the body and mind. Namo Buddhaya. Namo Buddhaya. Maintaining that connection with subtle vibration, present moment aware. peaceful. All beings be free from greed, hatred, fear, and ignorance. All beings be free from self-created pains and sufferings of body and mind brought about by their unskillful thought, speech, and action. All beings have the patience, strength, mindfulness, and wisdom to meet and overcome all difficulties in life. All beings able to hear the teachings of the Dhamma, practice meditation, to free their minds from confusion and suffering. All beings able to live peacefully and harmoniously together, understanding the ultimate interconnectedness, interdependence, and essential emptiness of all conditioned things. May all beings be well, peaceful, and wise. Continue sitting longer if you like, and ready. Take your rest.